Good morning.
This morning we begin with a little background. I'd like to give you some information of the founder of the Jesuits, St Ignatius of Loyola. He lived from 1491 until 1556. He was the youngest of 13 children in a very wealthy family. Sadly, his mother died when he was only 7. As a young man, what he wanted most in the world was glory. He wanted to be a hero, and so he joined forces with a local duke, and he set out to go off into battle. And he was pretty good, too. They were pretty successful. He did very well until 1521, when a cannonball hit his legs and injured him very badly. He endured great pain, and he had to have several surgeries back at the time before they had developed much anesthesia. And he was laid up for a very long time. While he was recovering, he did a great deal of reading and thinking and praying. He read a book, De Vita Christi, by Ludolf of Saxony. This book is a commentary on the life of Jesus, and it borrows from the writings of over 60 of the church fathers. In this book, the author suggests that the reader place himself at the scene in the gospel stories and visualize in order to experience some great moments like the Nativity, the calling of the disciples, the feeding of the 5,000, or the crucifixion. So Ignatius tried it. Didn't have much else to do laying in that bed anyway, so he gave it a shot. And he found out that with practice, he became quite good at it, and he experienced a dramatic spiritual awakening. He recognized that the imagination has power to take us to other places and to offer us the opportunity to encounter things that are beyond our personal life experiences. He saw imagination as a great tool which could be used in prayer, and that it could help draw people closer to God. Ignatian contemplation is one of the many spiritual practices that we studied in seminary. And the reason why I'm talking about it this morning is that our gospel lesson this morning is a particularly good one for this type of spiritual practice. Now, everyone's different, and no one prayer practice works for everybody. However, each one of us has within us a sense of stillness, of holiness, of healing, that, however subtly, flows through our everyday lives. And it calls us to deepen our experience with God. Imaginative prayer may be one of the practices that could help you to accomplish that. If you would like to try it, there are basically 4 steps. The first one, quiet yourself and pray that God will come and meet you in the experience. Step 2, use your imagination. The gospel story is the context for this meditation, so see yourself there. You're in the temple. It's 1st century Jerusalem. Jesus is there. He turns over the tables of the money changers, and he shouts at the dove sellers. Imagine the scene as vividly as you can. Step 3, become a part of the story. As the story unfolds around you, allow yourself to participate in some way. Become one of the characters. You might see yourself as one of the disciples, and so perhaps amazed, or confused, or horribly embarrassed, as Jesus creates chaos in this, the holiest of places. You could be one of the money changers, or one of the chief priests, or one of the elders. You could even be Jesus. And the story is just the starting point for this exercise. Relax and let your imagination draw you into an encounter with the sacred. Be playful and go beyond dove seller. It's about time somebody did something about the corruption in Jerusalem. That's what my neighbor says. But as far as I'm concerned, what Jesus did is just plain crazy. And honestly, what is the big deal here? It's Passover. Every faithful Jew in the region is expected by law to come to Jerusalem for the Passover, and Jews from all over the world have come too. The place is mobbed. Everyone comes to the temple, and those who come are required to pay a temple tax, and it must be paid in sanctuary shekels. Foreign coins are unclean. It may be all right to pay other debts with foreign coins, but the debt to God must be paid with coins that are blessed. Only temple shekels are pure enough for a temple tax. Jesus must know this. And how are people supposed to pay their temple tax if they can't exchange the coins they've brought from Rome and Egypt and Greece? This is the way that it has always been. Doesn't Jesus know that? In my opinion, he's being unreasonably judgmental and demanding. The money changers are providing a service. Of course, they charge a lot of money for this service, but that's to be expected, isn't it? I've heard people complain about what a hardship it is, and it's true. Most Jews are poor these days. Of course, it's a hardship, but life is hard, and I don't make the rules, and I can't change the rules either. And if Jesus thinks that he can storm in here and change the rules himself, well, he's got another thing coming. I'm a simple seller of doves. I just do my job and stay out of politics. And if Jesus knows what's good for him, he'll stay out of politics too. I've heard people complain about the money changers. They say that they and the animal sellers are greedy, but we're just trying to make a living. You can see that, can't you? Every Jew who comes to Jerusalem at Passover wants to offer a sacrifice to God, a thank offering. As a dove seller in the temple court, I provide an easy way to do that. You may think that it's a racket. I say it's just making the most of an opportunity. And just think of all the trouble we spare the pilgrims who come to the temple. They don't have to transport any animals, and not having to bring animals all the way to the temple. Now that's worth something, isn't it? Maybe it's not worth as much as we charge, but like I said, I didn't invent this arrangement. I'm just working with it. I didn't create the system. I'm just trying to make the most of it. There's nothing wrong with that, is there? It's not as if my big goal in life is to exploit poor people. I'm just here making a living, like everybody else. I heard about Jesus, but I hadn't heard he could become so angry. I tell you, that fanatic from Nazareth had a whip in his hand, and he was racing through the outer court of the temple, cracking that whip and shouting and turning the tables upside down. He was trying to clear out the money changers and all the other merchants. He even yelled at us, the dove sellers, insisting we get all our things out of the temple. I hope he's not like those prophets. You know the ones, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Hosea. They think we should do away with sacrifices. Let me tell you something. People like sacrifices. It's much less trouble to sacrifice some poor animal to God than to sacrifice something more personal, like a way you're living or a grudge you're holding. In the long run, it's a lot less expensive to buy a couple of my dear doves than to change your life, for heaven's sake. I'm not sure I've ever seen anyone so angry. My neighbor says it was passion, but make no mistake about it. It was anger. His rage was large enough for all of Jerusalem, and by now, all of Jerusalem has heard about it. Who does he think he is? God? This man needs to get a grip, or he's going to end up like one of the doves that I sell. And so, if you were to use this technique in your own spiritual practice, you might not be as detailed as this author. She obviously has context as it went on. Yours must be simpler, or might be simpler. It might involve what it looks like, what it sounds like, what you can smell and taste and touch in the environment, people you imagine that you might encounter. They take all kinds of forms. So, how's your imagination? Are you good at envisioning, pretending, imagining? Can you picture the scene in this gospel story? Can you imagine what it must have been like? And could you possibly learn and grow from using this kind of spiritual practice? That's a personal question. Some people are great at imagining, and some people find it very difficult and it doesn't fill them. Every person is different. So we all must answer that question for ourselves. In today's gospel lesson, Jesus refers to himself as the temple that would be torn down and rebuilt in 3 days. Today, we need to realize that now we are the temple. Our bodies, our thoughts, our lives are the space within which God dwells, the sacred space through which the world encounters the presence of the holy. May we be willing to examine ourselves and change. Willing to allow Jesus to turn over the tables behind which we stand to make our excuses and justify our weaknesses. Willing to be torn down and built again when the fullness of the experience of Lent and the power of the resurrection so envelop us that we can no longer live in darkness. Embrace the darkness of Lent and all of the opportunities that Lent offers. Do it now while it is time, for soon we shall see a great light. In the name of the Father, and of the Son,